All right, round two. Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to Therapy Rebranded, where we're consistently inconsistent.
Ding. It just sounds like hot breath.
All right. Y'all get that later. So let's dive into the Reddits. We only got 2 today because we got a lot of topics to cover. Well, one deep dive.
One deep dive. It's going to be good. All right, me first?
Yeah.
Thinking about taking a DNA test against my mom's wishes. I, 19-year-old non-binary, damn, I got that quickly.
Don't fuck up their pronouns.
Thank you. I'm the oldest of 3 and my parents' only biological child. I think DNA stuff like Ancestry is pretty cool, and I've brought up the idea of taking a test a few times in the past. The most recent being about a week ago when my mom and I were discussing family history with my grandpa, her dad. Whenever I do this, she doesn't like it. Here are the reasons I can think of. 1, in her words, it's opening a door you can't close. The example she uses is my sisters, who were both adopted. Neither have any interest in learning about their biofamilies at the moment. But if they were to get in touch with parents or siblings or whatever, that's a choice that can't be undone. But it's weird that she'd use the example for her biological daughter.
Pause before we go to the second one. I have to say 2 things. 1, I feel like I can't imagine it's healthy to be adopted and be in a space where like your adoptive parents think like you're opening a door, or it's like a big decision to like reach out to your bio parents. Like I feel like that might be a response to their mom, not actually how those sisters feel. And 2, this is making me question whether or not, because I'm already conspiracying on why she doesn't want her to look it up. This makes me wonder if she's also adopted and they just like lied to her too, or her dad's like a sperm donor and they didn't want to tell her that, and like their whole claim to fame is they have this one like biological kid and that makes her feel special and she doesn't want to feel lied to.
Or incest. Have you seen the articles about incest is on the rise?
No.
We'll get into it another time.
Another time sounds right.
Another time.
Did you guys see incest is on the rise?
Yeah, she did just say that. I short-circuited.
Do you actually want to know? I've sent Javae this article twice.
Oh, I'm so sorry. No, it's okay. You literally send me 5 things on Instagram a day. So I
see so many things and I'm like, she'll see it eventually. It's not even to see. I just like in a month, she'll look back.
I do.
I know you do.
I scroll.
If it's really important, I send it to our messages or to Therapy Rebranded. I'm wondering if there's other health stuff in the... Two, she has a gene that puts her at a higher risk for certain cancers, and we don't know if I inherited that. Oh. Though I think that finding out about that earlier would be good for me. When I brought up getting tested for this right after I turned 18, she brushed me off. That's creepy and weird. I'm wondering if there's other health stuff in the family or someone we don't talk to that I'm not supposed to be aware of. I don't think she's aware of any privacy concerns.
Oh my God, like she had other kids she gave away or something?
Like incest.
Because siblings would come up too. Go ahead.
Where was I? I don't think she's aware of any privacy concerns, such as information being leaked, since she's never brought that up. Overall, I don't think she's hiding anything from me, but it also doesn't make sense why she's so opposed to the test, which makes me suspicious, as it fucking should. If something unexpected did show up, I'd keep my mouth shut unless it was related to my health. I live on campus August through May, so I'm thinking of doing Ancestry or something when I move back into my dorm. On the one hand, I'm an adult, and it's likely that she wouldn't find out unless I told her. On the other hand, I feel bad about not trusting her and going behind her back. About your health? Edit. Thank you all for taking the time to respond. I wanted to address some of the stuff you said. 1, I'm definitely my father's kid. I look a lot like him.
Baby girl.
That's funny.
Sorry, baby them.
Baby that, baby they. I was not aware of how finding out about health conditions could affect getting insurance. Overall, I've decided not to do the test and not to bother my mom with this anymore. Thank you for your input. It's really helped with my peace of mind.
She's so in denial, and her relationship with her mom is so unhealthy. And literally nothing about finding out your own history is a betrayal to your mom. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with doing it and not telling her. It's not a big secret. It's not a big lie. That's your body, your choice to the fullest. All this shit everyone wants to say, like, that's that exemplified. Like, what a weird, like, a mesh, which I would describe in like layman's terms is like too close relationship to have with your mom, that like you feel like you can't be curious about yourself because that's a betrayal to your mom. Yikes.
Underline that fucking definition.
Ooh, okay. So then the comments. Scoop Booty said, Jim at be forewarned. There may be answers you wish you didn't ask for. I would let her know you intend to do the DNA test. That if there is anything she needs to share, now is the time. Give her a chance to fess up and just be honest with her. That's what you'd want from her, probably. What do you think about that suggestion from Scoop Booty?
I think it's weak. It's not like the worst fucking thing in the world. Like, it's an option, but it's just why.
Do you guys
I think I could do this with false. I would do this hoping that they would do the right thing. Like, in my inner me would be like, I hope they do the right thing.
It's like the perfect. It's like you're like playing it out. Like this is how it'll go in the perfect way.
Yeah, what are you gonna say, Gabe?
Oh, I was just gonna say it's like this is how I would have thought in the past, at least. I think now I'd face it, but I could easily justify like going like, whatever. Like if shit was good like in my home, I'd be like, why do I need to fuck with this or change it? Like. I can just see justifying it to myself. Is there anything?
This other person says, it's really funny. Their name is the Devil's Advocate. She says she's against it because she is hiding something. Do it. Yeah.
So I do. So if.
What's the matter with living in denial is kind of what I'm wondering. Like, is that ever healthy?
There's nothing wrong with living in denial. I think the issue is she's living in denial because she thinks it's going to hurt her mom's feelings, not because she doesn't want to know.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
If she decided, like, I actually am not ready to know this, like, I'm just going to take my mom's advice, then that's fine. That doesn't feel like what's happening. What feels like what's happening is, like, she's not going to go behind her mom's back, in quotes, but she also isn't going to have the confrontation with her mom anymore. And when she says the words, I don't want to bother her with it, that really cued me to, like, your mom's giving you cues to let it go. So I don't know. If you want to live in denial, that's fine. But I would go at least get the gene testing. At least go get the gene testing, like to find out whatever gene you have that makes it more likely for you to have cancer. Like that feels very important.
Yeah.
Is it?
It's also, somebody said, tinfoil stuff aside, genetic predisposition is not the same thing as pre-existing condition. So I've never heard that it raises your premium.
Measurement tall 7701. I advise all my relatives against DNA testing for many reasons. 1, privacy. Eugenics movements are real. 2, pre-existing conditions will raise insurance premiums. 3, the government uses DNA testing to track crimes, meaning a voluntary submission of DNA has led to arrests of relatives. I love how this assumes like your relatives are on. Yeah, and your relatives are on motherfucking bullshit. Clearly,
yes,
you could get specific gene testing to look for risk factors. I just think that whatever she decides to do, she should do it because she wants to. And like, what?
People are insane. Ren 3092 said, at this point, you owe it more to your dad to find out if you are his. If you are not, be at peace if he doesn't want anything to do with you or your mother anymore. Do the right thing here. People are weird. I gotta get off.
Ren sounds hurt.
Sorry, continue.
That's interesting, though. Like, if there's a dude out there who is their father and wants to be, we don't know if the woman ran off.
She doesn't know him that, though.
And I have done my ancestry DNA, and I'm not really worried about crimes or the government or any of that, mostly because like with your social work license too, we had to like do full fingerprinting, like all the all the shit.
Every
like,
job
we're being very tracked. So I'm just kind of like, there is no living off the grid anyways.
Bro, as soon as you're born, bro.
But everything about the energy of this is that her mom is very manipulative, and I'm not feeling it.
Yeah.
At all.
Yeah.
Is it easier for you guys to do therapy in that, like, you just, you know how you keyed in on the words? Because you're reading it, you can, like, it's crystallized in front of you. Do you ever have that? Or do you get what I'm saying?
I don't understand.
I do understand what you're saying. He's asking, like, is it easier when you're, like, reading to be able to pick up on, like, themes and stuff people are saying? For me, I feel like body language and tone tells a lot more than words. So it's kind of hard with reading because I feel like I'm more likely to read something wrong that I'm reading than, picking it up in person. But though it's easier to, like, pick up on specific wording and remember it. I will say that.
I think also, like, you get kind of trained to, like, hear different language. And it is true. Like, reading something is probably, like, less reliable to tell, like, somebody's, like...
Because you don't have tone.
You don't have tone. You don't have body language. You can't see their face. Like, that stuff is, like, really important. Like, so...
Knowing if she was writing that in tears or not would tell me a lot about, like, the reliability of the content.
Yes.
Like, the tone in which somebody says something tells me a lot. Like, the emotion that, like, is accompanying with what they're saying, like... helps me figure out like how true this probably is for them.
It's also why people tell you not to fight in text.
Fighting in text sometimes is bad, but I also think sometimes when it's something that is charged, it can be nice to have the space to wait to respond.
That's true.
Like
That's
it's
true.
nice to be able to be like, actually, I'm not gonna respond for a while, or I'm gonna reread it. And like it's nice to be able to go and reread what you said too, of like, because I think sometimes in the moment you'll be like, oh, I was being gracious, or oh, I was being whatever, and then if you go back and read it 3 days later, you're like, that was kind of shady and whatever.
I just broke up over text, and let me tell you, it is extremely unfulfilling. Though it's like, because
of course.
You're being misunderstood.
Yeah.
You know,
but do you feel understood in person?
More so.
Yeah.
I think.
I really do.
I feel like people are able to be taken in by the emotions that you're expressing more in person, and so like people are less defensive, I think.
There's just more trust.
All right, second one.
All right, let's go.
This is from 2 Hot Takes. Partner thinks I cheated. I don't think I did. Advice needed. This will bring kind of...
Is this micro cheating again?
I don't know. I actually just skimmed it. I didn't read it. This will bring kind of jumbled... Yeah, okay, one more time. This will be kind of jumbled since I've been arguing since like 4 a.m. I'm purposely leaving out gender to avoid biased answers.
Oh, God.
Which cracks me up because...
It's a man. It's a man writing it. Biased answers.
So basically me and my partner Elle have been together for about 7 months-ish. We live together and basically do everything together. Rarely a moment spent apart aside from work.
Definitely a man.
This morning I wake up to a text message claiming I'm a liar and that they are sleeping in the other room. Puzzled, I start freaking out about it, of course. Oh, of course.
Of course.
So here's what happened. Before I met my partner, I used to talk to this person. We will call them G. Me and G never really had much of a relationship, mostly texting on and off and some sexting sometimes. I've known G for about 2 years. During that time, I was celibate and they lived across the ocean.
Wait, can we pause? Here we go again. Here we go. Buckle up, guys.
You ready?
Yes.
Okay. During that time, I was celibate and they live across the ocean. I would say things that implied G had the opportunity to get sexual with me, X. Example, quote, come fuck me. Example, this actually quote ended. I put ended in quotations because it was never a consistent thing. About a few months before I met my partner, we started dating in December. Every now and then G will send me memes. In January, I responded to a meme with one of those automatic laughing emoji responses.
Memes and nudes.
Every once in a while, if I'm going through my unseen messages, I'll double tap like one of the memes, really not putting much thought behind it. This really pissed Elle off. Why is he discounting gender?
Because we know why. Tell us why.
I don't know. Apparently you've been through this before.
Can you tell I'm triggered?
And yeah. Your ex would absolutely be like, he would do something like this to a T.
He would do something. And I think it's the language around like, I don't want people to be biased around gender because if women read this and knew if I was a whatever, they would side with her. Well, too late. We already know. Because only men speak like that.
They claimed I was a liar and a cheater because of this, that I was never celibate. I tried to clarify that I don't think this is cheating, but I understand why they were uncomfortable. Anyway, I get why they were mad, and honestly, I really didn't put 2 and 2 together. G wasn't a backup plan for me. We were friends before anything got sexual, so I guess it just didn't click.
All this fucking background information to explain yourself literally is the most guilty thing I've ever heard.
Did she accuse G of being his backup plan? Is that why he's using that language, or was she the backup plan? These are things I want to know.
Right.
But a cheater, though, I don't think so. Am I a cheater? Edit. I want to add, I haven't sent anything of substance to them since October, aside from the emojis and likes.
You know what this reads like to me?
This is just somebody who enjoyed getting attention from somebody who they used to want to have sex with, and vice versa. And like, this whole, like, I did something wrong, but like, I get to pick the label is fucking annoying.
You know what it reads up to me?
When people do that.
Is that this person, we'll just say this person, whatever, being gracious.
Your ex?
Literally, oops. This person wrote this and I was like, I'm going to ask Reddit, like, their opinion, and I'm going to get an answer back and I'll prove to you. That's what it gives.
Yeah. And they're focusing on the fact that this person's overreacting, not on the fact that, like, they got caught, like, enjoying this attention. And maybe they are overreacting in some way, shape, or form, but, like, they're way too focused on, like, them calling them a cheater than they are on this other shit.
That, you just saying that triggered the fuck out of me.
Yeah. Edit 2. I think a lot of the information is lost on a lot of you, and I will clarify. 1, G does not send me sexual messages, a meme here and there.
Okay, buddy.
The other thing is it's very clear G is unimportant. So why does G have to remain in your life? That's the part as a woman that drives people crazy. If G is unimportant, it's not even about it being sexual in nature or not. G is unimportant. Why are we talking to them, responding to them? You're telling me nothing you guys talk about is of substance. Why do you need to still communicate? That's the part that drives people crazy, because that's the part that adds the question mark. Like,
because you're leaving
what's
out
the
context.
reason? What's the reason?
And
it doesn't make sense, so I don't know something.
And I know you, and I know that you don't give a fuck about this in all actuality. It's like a gaslight to like how much I know you. Like you don't give a fuck about this relationship.
2, the last time I've said anything of substance to G, like a full thought out text, was October. January was when I responded with laughing emojis. Since then, it's just been liking memes that were sent. The question is not, was it wrong? I'd feel terrible if they were the other way around. It doesn't feel like you would feel terrible. It kind of feels like the whole point of this message is to prove that it's not a big deal. But sure, you feel terrible.
It's one big gaslight.
You can't say you feel terrible and then at the same time be angry that they're upset. I like people who are like, I feel sorry, but I'm going to tell you exactly how mad you get to be. You don't feel that sorry.
Or else you would sit here and just
you don't have to fully agree with why I'm mad to just be like, I get that you're upset.
I get that you're upset.
You don't have to agree with why I'm upset to just like
hear it.
And if you feel terrible, you have to agree with some part. So don't like tell me which part's right or wrong. Like that's for another day when we've like moved past this. You can circle back and be like, just so you know, I felt really hurt that you equated this to this. Like they don't have to happen at the same time.
And that's the thing that people miss. That's the thing that people miss.
Yeah. They don't have this. You can have your moment later. If you're acknowledging you did something terrible or made someone feel terrible, then just comfort them if you actually give a fuck about their feelings. And then later, when you guys are in a better place, even like a week later, just be like, these are the things I really wanted to bring up.
Just let it really settle for a second. Like if you're really actively listening, you are really like listening to somebody. You're really like not thinking about, this is going to sound cut and dry, but like thinking about yourself, I feel like.
No. Let me finish this. The question is, did I cheat? Which at this point is semantics. Oh my God, this is your ex. I'm going to jump.
Yo.
G was not a side option for me. In fact, I thought so little of G that I didn't even think to consider them something to talk about. Edit. A lot of y'all are traumatized as fuck. Liking a meme isn't cheating. I literally can't even wrap my head around that. One meme every couple months, zero communication. Not you getting the answer you didn't want and losing it on the Redditors. This proves the whole point too of like, it doesn't matter what anybody says. You just aren't going to take accountability.
You literally just came here to bitch.
This is exactly what your ex would have done.
Yes.
Like to a T.
Would gone that to the nth degree, and no matter what, it's not his fault. What can you tell people why we think that's a man? Do you think it's a man?
I do think it's a man.
Why do we think it's a man?
I've got the answer for you coming up.
Tell us.
Go ahead.
Give me a second. You guys keep play that out.
Okay. I think it's a man because, well, honestly, because they thought that their gender would work against them, so it has to be a man. A woman. Exactly. If you're a woman, this works. This story works for you if you're a woman.
Yep.
Because like, if you're a woman and like a guy's reaching out to you that you're like kind of not interested in or whatever, and then this guy's freaking out, I feel like some people are gonna have empathy for you. And if you're a man, women are about to go hard as fuck on you over this.
It just doesn't matter.
They don't care. Like they're like, what?
You sound untrustworthy.
Yeah. Like, go ahead.
I think you're right by that logic, and I don't know the answer yet. I just saw a comment where it said like that they guessed it, but when you said, like, I agree by your logic 100%, but the wording right when you said it to introduce it, I was thinking woman all the way. And then you both said men. I was like, huh. So here's the first question someone asks about their age.
Are you an L very young?
I saw this. Read it.
Are you an L very young? This sounds like, this is somebody, Alarming Kale 1997.
Oh my God, you're so ADHD.
It's so bad.
Keep going. Start over.
Are you an L very young? This sounds like an overreaction by someone very young. Liking or reacting to memes sent you by someone you never slept with is not cheating. Not even close. The only advice I can give you is you be careful with people who are controlling and people who react this way regardless of who is right or wrong. But in conclusion, no, you are not a liar or cheater.
That was a woman.
Yeah. Yes! I thought that too!
That was a woman.
And that's what we call a pick-me, guys. Sorry.
I can tell. I love how y'all can tell who's who, LOL.
Yes. That age gap with that massive lack of emotional regulation is insane. Get him. Your partner is gearing up for some controlling behavior. Oh, wait, I didn't get that. I didn't read that all the way through.
Gotcha.
I don't have the full comment, I guess, underneath this.
That's okay.
Sorry, but
No,
yeah.
you're good.
What you did is...
I think
You guys were right then?
I think so, but I think the whole thing about it is just like,
Are we being biased?
I feel like guys write LOL a lot, but maybe we do. I don't know.
I write LOL
I don't.
a lot. That's because I'm a pussy.
If a man wrote me a fucking LOL in a text message, I'd drive to his house and slap him in the face.
You'd be fine.
some men write men other LOLs, but
That's
in like
not
a dry
true.
way. In
No.
a dry way.
You would have a bi threesome, Gabe. You wouldn't go to his house and...
Rachel, that's one of your funniest comments that you've ever said on the show.
I try sometimes.
Because it's
That's
accurate. All right.
Fucking vibe for you.
That was good.
Sorry. I can't ever let people have their moments sick. Okay.
No, that was good. I love the riffing. Oh, wait. Oh, fuck.
Okay.
No, sorry. Keep going.
Okay. The other thing I just wanted to say about why I feel like it's a man also is I just feel like most women would have folded after the internet told them they were wrong and they didn't fold. Most women would have folded.
Oh, okay.
Like
yeah,
most
you're right.
women would have been like, oh my God, I was wrong. The pressure, the social pressure. Like they actually want to know the answer.
Yeah, you're right. Total man thing would be to logic. No. You guys just don't understand.
Oh,
exactly.
yeah,
Let me restate everything.
I left out the extra details that would have made me right. That's such a man response.
I was
didn't
actually
want
abusing
to
her
do
more
this.
than you thought.
Yes. Yeah. Whereas women, when they don't want to take accountability, they go, you don't get that I was trying hard. And they like go into that.
You don't get
Yeah.
that.
Like they don't logic their way out of it. They like feel they do the like empathize with me as a human thing like immediately.
It's nice to hear you admit that women don't use logic.
I logic my way through people.
I'm just joking.
Women use logic.
I'm just joking.
Only when I turn
Women don't. Women actually are the smarter ones because they switch tactics, and men keep the same tactic. You've been trying to logic your way through. Switch tactics.
Why would you tell people that?
Switch tactics. Why are you using the same tactic? Cry.
We should start
Cry.
You don't know how hard I've been trying.
Yeah.
That was so
I just
funny.
fuck all these other women, but I've been trying so
but
hard.
Switch tactics. Like that's no, you don't even do that. You just go, oh my god.
can't do this.
Literally all. Let me just give him the recipe because he's never gonna watch this anyway. So let me just say this. All he had to do was say, you know what, you're right. I was wrong. I'm just like I just am so upset when you use the word cheater because I never told you this, but like my dad cheated on my mom and like it ruined our family. And so like for you to compare me to him would it just made me so upset. And I just am so sorry. I'm so insecure for my family falling apart that I did have this backup option, but I didn't really want her.
You're a
I
C-U-N-T.
want you.
You're a C-U-N-T, and do you know why, bitch? Because that was my life story.
And that nigga, and he would have got pussy that night.
And would have.
You're welcome. And scene.
And
Do you-
scene, Finn. Keep
Do you think I want to have sex with your best friend? You think I wanted to do that?
Wait, that went so left.
It's because you were. It's because I've been trying so hard and you haven't been paying attention. I was just finding solace in her.
Literally,
But it was
everybody
you all
couples
along that I
therapy ever.
loved.
No, you have to throw in there.
I just fell into her pussy. I'm so sorry. I don't know what happened.
You have to say, you don't understand. I've been turning her down for years because of how much I loved you. And I never told you because I know how much you loved her and I thought I could withstand it. But that night we got in that fight, I just lost it. And then she told me if I didn't keep fucking her, she would tell our kids.
Oh my God, Jesus Christ. You guys both need
What's
to write
happening?
like a sad erotica novel. Yo, that was horrible.
I'm gonna use the. I
That's
had to
every
keep fucking
woman's
her.
fucking story.
Huh? Yeah, you had to keep fucking her.
Had to keep fucking her.
So here's the
Cries into the pussy.
here's the lesson we learned in our family.
Sorry, that was violent.
If women like you enough, they'll lie to themselves. You don't have to lie to them; they'll lie for you.
I've done it.
And
Oh, yeah.
just give them a little bit to lie with. Just give them a little to work
Yo,
with.
just
and
give me a
they'll-
little bit of rope to hang myself with.
A little.
Just a little bit.
I need something to tell my friends. I already didn't tell them the whole truth, so I just
Ah!
need something small, just anything.
Please.
They already don't know how bad it is.
And I'm
just
only
let me
gonna
keep
tell
my
them
dignity.
Oh my God, bitch, you're reading me for fun.
I'm reading women. I'm not reading you, girl.
No, I know.
All right. instead of a check-in, we're going to talk about this documentary that Rachel had me watch because we had topics on topics on topics and only so much time.
So many times.
So,
Slave play, not a movie, a play.
Rachel tells me, she's like, I need you to watch this. And then she always wants me to watch it with her so she can watch me watch it. And I'm just like, everything you want me to watch, like, requires focus. And we talk through every show, bro.
I know.
Why do you want to watch it together?
No, because I want to talk about it.
I don't want to be here for 5 hours pausing and talking.
You're right.
I just want to process it because I don't even know how I feel about it yet.
That's fair. No, it's fair. It's fair.
Yeah.
I just need to paint the visual for how I'm watching the movie and texting you at the same time. I'm in bed like this with my phone.
Titties out.
Like this. Titties askew like this. They're like this. They're kind of cockeyed actually.
Yeah.
One is hanging out the side of the sports bra.
You know what? You know what this also made me think of is like there's one guy that you've been like you've hooked up with before, talked to before that would like love to argue about this with you. Did you think about that?
Yes.
Yes.
And I haven't brought it up on purpose.
They've come up before on Patreon, but yeah.
No, literally.
By the way, the rest of this conversation will be on Patreon
Period.
because
So
we're about to go there with this
subscribe.
slave play.
We're
And
about to go there.
Slave play in the sexual sense is where we're going.
It's slave play in the sense of every single sense of the word.
Now, I'm sorry to interrupt this wonderful check-in, but it got a little too personal. So if you'd like to hear the rest of it, subscribe to us on Patreon. Now, back to the show.
All right, we're back.
Hello.
Well, can't drink a bottle of wine. Well, we shared a bottle of wine. Can't share a bottle of wine without a pee break.
I know. I'm
And I have it in me.
I'm going to muscle it through till we finish. I'll be okay.
A real one.
Okay, what are we on to now?
So I've, for like a really long time, wanted to talk about the holistic psychologist, but I was like afraid to talk about it because she has such a like significant following. And to be honest, I truly didn't know how I felt about her because Nicole's the one who is in the
blue.
jean,
Yeah.
the jean shirt,
They
jean
look
dress.
the same to me.
Yeah, jean dress though. That's her.
She's definitely a power bot.
Holistic psychologist is Nicole LePera, and she has like this really big following on Instagram, on YouTube, and then she has like this kind of subsect where she does something called the like self-healer circle, which has like a bunch of people who are a part of it. There's like wait lists for it, and it's basically like this group or community that she's created in which she's like has all these people who are working on like becoming healed in quotes and like their fullest self, right? And I'm not gonna lie, like prior to me becoming a therapist, like I used to like her stuff. I used to see it because like I wasn't really tuned into anything. I would just see a post that felt very general and I would like it. Like, oh, this resonates with me. Like I didn't really have a real understanding of like who she was or what she did. So I just want to be honest about that. Of just kind of like before I was a therapist and like I saw the nuance of it, like she talks about things in very plain language. And so like to me, I was like, this feels accessible. Like that was kind of my gut reaction when I took her in. And then like as soon as I kind of became a therapist and had more knowledge in the field, I was like, ooh, I don't like what you're doing. So she not only does she do like her self-healer circle, but she also has like a podcast. And I listened to hours of the podcast prepping for this because I was like, I could go on Instagram and I could like cherry pick all the stupid things that I think are said, or I could like give it a fair chance and like listen to her in like nuance, like for hours at a time and like see if I connect with what she's trying to say, even if like every piece wasn't quite clicking. And that's just like not what happened for me. So
There's a bunch of gobbledygook.
She is the holistic psychologist on Instagram. Her name is Nicole LePera. She has a PhD in clinical psychology, I think. And she did research and then she's been like practicing in the self-healer circle, whatever that looks like. It feels
It's
like
MLM.
I don't know if this to be true, but it feels more like coaching than like therapy.
What's the other C word we're
or
looking
like
for?
self-help.
Or like cult? Is that the other C word you're looking for? Maybe not. Sorry,
Maybe not.
allegedly. That was a joke.
But so like I'm listening to this podcast, right? And prior to like checking out the podcast, because I did it in preparation for this, and I like very intentionally, because there's been a lot of feedback about her, like generally as a human, which I will get to, but like I've heard different things from different people. Some people really love her, some people don't like her. And so I was like, let me kind of listen to some podcasts from like throughout the years to kind of like see if there's change and growth. And to be honest, there was. But so going into this, I knew this to be true already because I had looked up her and followed her on my personal page on Instagram before. And so I had seen that she's in a throuple. So she is married to a woman.
Go ahead.
She's married to a woman, and then they brought in a third partner whose name is Jenna, and that's who she does the podcast with. So they were doing the podcast together for, I think, years.
She and Jenna were.
Yes.
Yeah.
She and Jenna were doing the podcast together for, I think, years prior to like announcing and disclosing that they were in a relationship. And so they came out about like their throuple. So now they're doing this podcast together. And there's a lot of the podcast that feels like education. Like the goal of it is to be educational. Like as the podcast progresses throughout the years, you can tell like the goal goes from just like straight educating to like relating to the fans and like trying to create community and like be open and honest. So that kind of seems like where she's coming from with all of this. The part that's hard is like at the end of every like quote educational post, and I say that in quotes, like there's a sales pitch. So that makes you feel like a little disingenuous, but she's very, very successful in what she does. And there's been a lot of rumblings of her like not keeping her license, like not staying licensed. And I personally don't want to focus on that because like it feels very like colonizer-y to be like the thing that's wrong with her is not being licensed, and that's really not the thing that's wrong. But those are kind of my initial thoughts and like an overview of her. Gabe, if you've never heard of her before, like, do you have clarifying questions?
I guess I guess not. She is a real therapist, you're saying, right?
She was a licensed therapist at some point.
We don't know if she's like kept up with her.
We don't know if she kept up her license because you have to renew it.
What do you guys personally think if someone loses their or doesn't keep up their license? Does that invalidate them as a therapist? Or not invalidate, but you know what I mean.
My immediate thought is that I like can understand it. I can understand why you might want to go about it. My thing is I actually kind of like in some ways that the board is there because it feels like it's protecting me and clients actually. Like people actually deserve a way of like recourse to get against like a bad therapist or a therapist who's like done them wrong or to report somebody. And I think it can get a little bit mixy and a little bit mixed up if you're not reporting to somebody, if you're not being beholden. I don't agree with like all the things at the board, but I do get like why it's there.
I think for me personally, I want to know why you didn't renew your license. Like that's the biggest issue for me. Like if somebody was like a seasoned therapist who didn't renew their license, I think that that's risky for them on their end. Like you open yourself up to a lot of litigation. So like that's not necessarily the smartest thing, but
my thinking is, so when you sent me this stuff and I looked through it, this is the thing that jumped out to me as just utterly repulsive and probably why she let her license go, right? Or like, that's what I'm wondering.
Yeah, and we'll get there.
And I know we will, but
and that's actually the part that stood out to Rachel this entire time is like, and for people who are listening, he showed a picture of her basically at the end of an educational post promoting herself. And what stood out to me the most, and the reason that I make up that she let go of her license is that she's not doing individual couples or group therapy anymore, and she's doing this self-healer circle. So like her income is off of Instagram and her website.
She's not doing clinical work.
Yeah, so that's what comes up for me like initially is just like, well, this just lets me know that like maybe you don't need that protection because you're not actually doing that work anymore.
Right.
And I do think that like if you as a therapist stop doing clinical work altogether, I do think you get kind of rusty. Like I do think there's like a piece of like you kind of lose the pulse of like what's going on and like what's changing in the field. And like for a lot of people, most people as therapists, like you need to encounter a client who has a need you can't fill often to learn something. Like that's how you're picking up and learning things is like, I have this client that like, I don't know if I can keep them because I don't know if I can treat them and like, let me learn this, or like the skill set I have isn't working for this client. So I'm going to change. And like, so you kind of are bringing your perspective against like real world values, and like that's shaping how you kind of see things. And she's like not bringing her perspective against like real world values because like she's not doing therapy, it seems. Well, I was just saying the other thing is like if the person you're doing your podcast with that you want to bounce everything off of is in love with you, like you're also probably not getting like a real perspective and like checking out what you're saying. Like what I heard a lot throughout the podcast was like them telling each other like they're brave and like this like unending support, validation, admiration, which like isn't great for like a learning space. Like you need to be challenged in a learning space, not be met with like admiration constantly. So
Oh my God, that's the clip.
I like when I was watching listening to the podcast, you know, they did this whole episode and they like titled it episode 1. It was kind of like a restart of their podcast, the Self Healers soundboard, when they came out about who they were, and they were praising themselves for being authentic. And there was just a big piece of me that was like, there's something about this that feels really unethical, that like you've been telling people for the last couple of years that like you're sharing who you are truly and like your honest perspective, and you two are literally pretending you're not in love and like eating each other's like
After
that.
and before each episode.
And it just felt
Allegedly.
like I mean, that's true. They came out and so they were together. So that part was like, you're applauding yourself by doing something after you came out the closet of like being unethical. And like, she didn't literally come out the closet because she was already openly queer before that, because she was married to a woman. But so that's kind of like where I was going with that. What are your kind of like initial thoughts about her?
I'm underlining everything you're saying.
That's
I totally
fine.
agree. And there were other things where the things that really struck me across listening to a couple of the episodes are like the language that she uses is just so, it's very intoxicating. You're like, oh, like I connect with that, or I connect with this, but they repeat a lot of the same words. And I wrote down like they talk about being like enlightened, and they talk about being aligned over and over again. And I think that like that language is just like, it made me think about this new season of couples therapy, and there's a polycule, or they don't call themselves a throuple on there, but 3 people who are in a relationship with each other. And Orna talks about kind of that covering up of like of language and using language to kind of weaponize, and they use that same like, and like we're in alignment.
Yeah.
Which to me was really interesting. So I'm like, are they listening to them? I don't know. It was just kind of funny. Anyway, the language that she uses was really, it's not very specific as I'm listening across all of it. And I checked out a couple other ones, and she's saying terms or talking about like different types of relationships or experiences that she has in relationships, but there's not, she's not talking about necessarily like why that might be, or like giving any sort of like background, it feels like, to me at least, in a way that other therapists that I like to listen to often will like break things down or like talk about things in like this is why I think or know this, not just based on trauma is this. Or what? Do you know what I mean?
It sounds like you feel like other people provide more evidence about what they're talking about.
A little bit. And
why
I know
did
how
you
that
allude to them being a cult? Like, obviously that's your opinion.
Yes.
It's not a fact, but like
Yes.
in your opinion, like it felt like a cult. Why?
So to kind of go back to what Gabe had posted, and I know I kept on like messaging you about this specific thing, is kept on making jokes about it being like an MLM or a kind of a cult type thing. This kind of tipped me off because it seems a little
For
bit.
people who are listening, what are you posting at? It literally says, so at the end of
Yeah.
a post, it says, my private membership self-healer circle enrollment is open. We host workshops with top experts every month teaching you how to heal. Comment wait list if you haven't received your link to enroll. Can you hold your thought for a second?
Yes.
You can remember it?
Yes.
Hold it tight. Okay. I was listening to all of this and I was thinking in my head, what is the goal? What is healing? What is she selling? Like, what is she selling? Like, this is what I was thinking over and
No.
over again. So this is what she's selling, in my opinion. Healing is returning to your body, living authentically, and being radically responsible. So if you aren't already like in the therapy world, like if you don't listen to self-help therapy bullshit, or if you don't go to therapy, or if you don't read these books, right? And some of this is self-help bullshit, but the therapy version, like, you don't know what that means. Like, that's also just like jumbled language. So that aligns with what you were saying. But
Yep.
secondly, like as a therapist, what she's trying to signal is like healing means like you're not checked out. So like you're not numbing your feelings. You're not like drinking or eating them away or using relationships to distract yourself. Living authentically means like you're doing what feels good to you all the time, or you're doing what feels true to who you are, your values all the time. So that would be like, when you make decisions, you don't make decisions based on like your impulse in the moment. You make decisions based on like what you'd be proud of. Like, that's an example. And then radical responsibility is like, and that's a term that they've used in podcasts, but basically it seems like they're trying to describe like stop focusing on what other people did to you and just focus on like yourself. Just focus on like what you can do and how you can fix yourself. So those are kind of like it seems like the backbone of getting to a place where you're happy. And like the whole backbone of her whole practice is that every single person has it within themselves to be fully loved and happy. And like, you have had experiences in childhood that are preventing you from tapping into that, but like we can get you back there. We can get you there. And that was the healing thing.
And that's actually, I'm glad you brought that up because I think that's
back to the thinking it was kind of culty.
I think that's actually one of the pieces that makes it feel culty is the personal responsibility, because you hear so many times like, what is this? I've almost said Jim Jones, but what is his name? What's it called?
That is Jim Jones.
Is his name Jim
Kool-Aid?
Jones? Kool-Aid, whoever it is. Any of these like yoga instructor, healer gurus, whatever, they all talk about personal responsibility and how it's on you, and you're not doing enough, or you're not doing the right way, or you're not giving enough, kind of either money or time or effort or sex or whatever the weird thing is.
Yeah.
And in this case, it's like you're not giving enough of yourself. You're not doing enough kind of self-work. To kind of dial
You're
down
not having
what's wrong
enough
with you.
boundaries. You're not standing up for yourself enough. You're not being honest with yourself. Like, you're flawed.
Exactly. And I think that gives it that cult feel, and like the money piece. I think that it's the same. I feel the same way kind of about a lot of like mega churches or mega whatever's religious institutions that ask people to kind of pay high tithing or do a lot of like the pastors kind of have these egomaniacal, like we can save everybody, or like if you try harder, whatever type of thing, you can save yourself. And so it has that same type of air.
Yeah.
The other piece is that it just screams a little bit of like the silencing of like other people, or like not being like open to other perspectives also screams a little bit cultish to me. Just like you have to believe this and this is the way, and they all are kind of using the same language.
Why do you think
It's
she's
weird.
silencing other people's perspectives?
For context, there has been, and you talked about this too, there's been
Wait, hold on, pause. Gabe, are we still making sense?
Oh, yeah. No, for sure. Sorry, you didn't have to pause there. I just wanted to jump in with the question.
Go ahead.
After. Okay.
Yeah.
Jump in.
Why can she call herself a psychologist if her license has expired? Can you do that?
Because she might have the
Because
licensure
I think she
of
has a psychology
psychologist.
degree.
Yeah.
Okay.
She might have got her master's even.
She got her PhD.
Yeah.
She got her PhD in psychology. So she got a psychology degree. So she will forever be a psychologist.
I see.
Even if she's not a licensed psychologist.
with a board.
So I think, so overall, right? So basically she's this person who presents as like, I'm here to spread this. Okay. I'm here to spread this message. And the message I'm spreading is that like, there's all these other things, namely your childhood experiences that are like preventing you from being a happy, fulfilled person. And like, I can help you literally through my workbooks, like my self-healers workbooks that you can do on your own. You don't have to go to therapy. You don't have to do all of these other things. Rediscover who you are, because at the basis of all of this, you were born with the ability to make yourself happy, to be fulfilled, to be all of these things. Like that is the energy I'm getting when I'm reading all of this, when I'm consuming it, when I'm listening to it. Like I was listening to this and I was thinking like, why would this be appealing? Like, why would I jump into this? Right. And I think one thing that's really appealing is she doesn't talk at all about race. And there's a lot of people who don't enjoy talking about race.
She's the Brene Brown of like therapy,
but not.
but not.
She's a little different, but she doesn't talk about race at all. So like, I think that's one thing that's like very appealing.
She doesn't talk about any sort of like different power dynamics.
She does a little bit now.
A little bit.
I'll push back on that.
Okay.
She does a little bit. So she doesn't talk about race. So that's like one thing where I'm like, okay, that would feel good. I feel like she's really clear. Like if you didn't know like the science behind it was like, there's all these accusations that it's pseudoscience. Like, if you just trust it, like she got her PhD. She knows exactly what she's talking about. It's very clear. It feels like she's using the same language over and over, like you said again. So it feels like,
familiar.
It feels familiar, but it also feels clear. Like, oh, she's saying concise, plain language. Like when I listen long enough, I'll catch on to these words and what they're saying. And like they will randomly like stop and like define a word. Like not all the words, but they'll like randomly stop and define a word. The other thing is like there's a deep community on all of her social medias. Like it's very connecting. You're meeting a lot of other people who are trying to who are unhappy with their life circumstances and are trying to change them. So like
Mhm.
all of that is like feels like it would feel good. The other thing is like people have accused her of being victim blaming because she focuses really a lot on like what you can do better.
That was one of my questions is like, what is dangerous kind of about like what she's saying or what she's promoting?
I'll get to that.
Yeah.
So I feel like so there's a lot of like people call it victim blaming, but like the flip side of victim blaming, like why, like if you are a quote victim, like getting blamed might feel okay, is that like it makes you there's something very scary about being victimized, which is not always but usually that like that you had very little power over that happening to you. And kind of what she's saying is like actually you have a lot of power in saying what happens to you and like you did something wrong.
Well, it's
and
like
that's
empowerment language.
but it's like that's not empathetic, right?
Mhm.
But the flip side of that is like if I for instance was and I feel like I did something wrong to get, like I can prevent from being again. Versus if I got, I feel like I didn't do anything. Now I'm scared of the world because it feels like I did all the right things. I was just walking through life and this happened
And
to
it
me.
happened to me.
So being victim blamed in some weird way is empowering because it makes you feel like I'm in full control of what's going on in my life. So all of those things make me feel like,
And it also is what keeps people in kind of like abusive or toxic dynamics is because you think you have so much more control than you might have.
yeah. Oh, and that's, I think we can go into that to the next part of like when I was listening to her content and like, Gabe, if you could pull up like the podcast episode that kind of threw me. But like when I was listening to her content, she was giving kind of like her own kind of definitions for things and explaining kind of this concept that like she believes trauma is universal and like most people experience trauma and like that's something I'm pulling up my thing. They were like Jenna was saying it's not the event, it's the impact. And like I noticed that when both Jenna and Nicole were talking about trauma, they were using the word traumatic and overwhelming interchangeably. And like something being overwhelming and something being traumatic really actually isn't overchangeable.
Give it to him. Give him the spiel.
Well, it's just like being overwhelmed doesn't mean that you're having like the internal response in your body that would create like a trauma memory or like trauma in your body, right? And so like using them interchangeably is like I can get overwhelmed going to Walmart. That doesn't mean that that's a traumatic experience. Like it's very confusing, right? And so she's kind of presenting the other thing about her that feels very sinister before I go on to this is that, and I think Rachel agrees with this, is that like because she's not differentiating between like what's super bad and what's kind of like light, like big trauma versus small trauma. Like if you have no exposure to mental health and she's kind of teaches you like actually you can manage all of this yourself. There are some people who do need support in their mental health and it's like kind of unsafe for them to try to manage it on their own.
And it's a very like Western, I don't want to say white, but I will say kind of like a Western individualized way of thinking is that you only like you can just pull yourself out of this or you can pull yourself out of depression or trauma or whatever the thing is. And in actuality, it's exactly what you said. You need community, you need support, that actually is statistical, is that community is like one of the number one things that like impacts trauma. I don't want to say lessening, but kind of being mitigated for a lot of people is like the amount of support that they have.
So getting a message that like you should be able to, if you're a fully authentic and actualized person, do it on your own can be damaging.
Yeah.
So she talks about like basically in one of her episodes how she has like a new theory of trauma, and it's this notion that trauma is like universal, and she goes into the science, and this is the part that feels confusing when you're not a therapist, is like she goes into the science about like ACE scores, which is like adverse childhood experiences, and she's like, talks about how she growing up basically didn't have any of these adverse childhood experiences. ACE scores, there's like a list of things that like denote whether or not like this puts you at risk for basically having like behaviors and like physical symptoms that are harmful to you. And like,
so, like some of the things are like, did you experience divorce? Did you have enough to eat as a kid? There's just kind of like simple, like,
did you see abuse? Was there a parent incarcerated? And then like some of the things, it's like, you're at high risk for high blood pressure, whatever. Like there's these correlations between the two, supposedly. And so like, they're talking about that. And Nicole's basically saying, but like, I felt all the things that like people who have those felt, and I never had those, so like I didn't get it. And then her girlfriend who is like, well,
actually has.
well, it's like, well, I've experienced a lot of those things, but like your experience is valid too. And they like go on this whole thing of like the archetypes of childhood trauma. And she's literally reading from her book that she published, and they're like talking about it. So they named these like different archetypes that you could get from trauma, and they like named off the things that could cause like childhood trauma. And they said like, yeah, they have to happen consistently, which is like at least some kind of qualifier. But like, again, trauma is about like impact. And so like for you to say like these things could happen and they're going to create trauma is like, that's an assumption about like what the impact would be, which doesn't really make sense as a therapist, because as a therapist, and even what you guys said, it's about impact, right? So they named these things where it said, you know, they named the thing, and then after they said the thing, they like went into like what behavior like you're gonna get from this, right? So it also feels very like A to B. Again, a workbook. To think that you can make a universal workbook for everybody. How? Everyone responds to traumatic events differently. Everyone who has trauma responds a little bit differently.
Which to me is like a trauma-informed 101.
Yes. So the things that they said were having a parent who denies your reality, having a parent who does not see or hear you, having a parent that vicariously lives through you, having a parent who does not model boundaries, having a parent who is overly focused on appearance, having a parent who cannot regulate their emotions. And all of this to me was like vague as fuck.
That was yes.
Vague as fuck.
Doesn't that describe a narcissistic mom?
It could describe anybody.
It could.
Right.
Right. But also like imagine like, one, it could describe a lot of things, but two, what I feel like these are, I feel like
it could be a teen mom. Like
I feel like
anybody.
I feel like what's universal about this is like if a lot of these things were happening to you, like it would definitely prevent you from like, there would be ways that shaped your personality, and there'd be ways that like taught you to hide your feelings. But I don't know if you would have trauma. Like, I don't know if you would I can't say that just because these things happen to you consistently, you're going to have PTSD.
You might have a fucked up relationship with your parents.
And that's what you're saying when you're saying this is archetypes of childhood trauma, and like you just like widening the scope and saying like, well, this is, you know, my opinion, and here's these offshoots of evidence. And I only know that because I've looked at her argue with people in the comments.
And just like even the archetypes of childhood trauma sounds official. Like the way she says it is very like, this is it. There is no maybe. And it's people want people who are confident about what they're saying. And so I think when you talk like, you know,
if you were a person who had PTSD and you saw this, I think that
I actually have a client in mind who would hate this.
I also just feel like if you're, so if like you have PTSD and you saw this, like
it feels invalidating.
One, it feels invalidating, but I think two, like it doesn't really help you like decipher how this like impacts you. I think this is just like, it feels like, I can't say this is true, but it feels like throwing a wide net and like hoping you catch people and like kind of trying more to be like relatable than accurate.
Yes.
Like being relatable is more important than being accurate, which feels like a sales pitch.
Or having discussions. Like she's not having, and the people who she's having discussions with seem to be people who have kind of, I don't want to say this, but like drank the Kool-Aid a little bit.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I actually felt sad listening to her partner who was like, I have an ACE score of like 10, which means like you've had a bunch of horrible things happen, like have to hold space for this person who didn't have those things happen in their life. Like I felt kind of sad that like you were looking up to, admiring, and like being like, we share this experience of being traumatized, and like she didn't have an addict parent who like went to jail and went to treatment and was like out of their lives, and like instability, and like a parent who was absent, neglectful, like all these things that Jenna's naming. I'm like, the amount of space she's holding for Nicole, it was like irritating to hear.
I'm tentative to say this.
Yeah.
But does any part of that feel, I don't want to say like an abusive dynamic, but kind of like a predatory dynamic?
No, it just feels like Jenna's replaying some weird internal dynamic, allegedly. But like, it just feels like.
Which allegedly they've worked through.
Right. But like, well, no, they're always working.
Oh, sorry.
They're always working on it. They're always working on it.
Got it.
So then there was a second podcast episode, which was, and I'll put these all like in the description of the podcast so you can go look at them yourselves and listen to them if you're curious. But it was episode 50, how to deal with toxic situations. And there was a couple quotes that were really hard for me. So they were kind of talking about like toxic people. And they said like, well, before you go and like say someone's toxic or gaslighting, like toxicity is subjective and so is gaslighting. Like it's all subjective. Like everyone's reality is true, which like, yes. And like, if you're somebody who's being like abused and like trying to like rifle through like whether or not like that's really happening, like if you found this podcast, you would be like, oh, I knew I was like playing victim, like I knew I was whatever. And you don't have to create content that applies to everyone, but I feel like if you're saying like everyone can do this, which is kind of the energy, like, and we'll get into this more when we get into the Instagram post, like when you're saying like everyone can do this is valuable for everyone, all the diagnoses, like you have a responsibility for that to be true. And like, this isn't true. Like this like self-empowerment, like get myself through anything. Like I just need to focus on me and not worry about other people and just accept them for where they are. Like that's not good for anybody who's like in a position where they're disempowered. And then,
Go off, sis. And also they probably all get, do you think they color each other's hair? Or are they all the same hairdresser?
I don't know. So then Jenna said, when you're uncomfortable, you're healing.
I remember that. And
in that episode.
This is the whitest shit in the fucking world.
But say why that bothers us.
Because being uncomfortable might signal that you're unsafe. It's not cut and dry like that. Being uncomfortable might signal that it's damaging. Like if you're telling people that being uncomfortable is a signifier that you're having growth, like you're teaching them to go against their gut. Like
all the time.
There's a very different feeling of being nervous, which is growth, to being like uncomfortable, unsafe, whatever. And it's just like, you're just generalizing. Like these podcasts felt like they were for people whose lives were pretty stable and they were still unhappy and they wanted to know why.
It's like
Brene Brown.
Yes. Very similar. Very similar. Very similar.
Different type of self-help, but very similar.
But very similar of like, and for that audience, a lot of this is probably true. And like, it probably feels great to not have any like big trauma events happen in your life and have someone tell you, but you're just as fucked up as somebody who has had big trauma and you have just been as scarred and like inner you is just waiting to be open. Like how good would that feel?
Right. I have the simple steps to you taking care of yourself.
So the whole, like what was like scary about this to me was like the abuse victim piece of like, if you are in an abusive relationship, why was it nerve-wracking to you?
We had a episode like a while ago with Raquel Savage that I feel like broke a lot of the stuff down really well, but I feel it's, if you are somebody who's in an abusive dynamic or a controlling dynamic or something like that, or a belittling dynamic where your mind is already so kind of turned against yourself at a certain point, where the person who kind of has more power, quote unquote, in the relationship has probably gaslit you, lied to you, or kind of made you deny your reality in some sort of way that you already aren't trusting yourself. So and you're looking for reasons to stay in the relationship most of the time. Yeah. So somebody like this who comes along and talks about personal responsibility, not only does it sound good for, oh, I can show this to my partner, but you know, I'll take this on too. This can be a we thing. And I think people who are kind of on the receiving end of those type of dynamics often are like looking for something to like hold on to keep them there, like a little thread that says, let's try this, let's try this. And I think for people who have more control in those situations, a lot of this could be weaponized. A lot of this can be used as, well, look, I'm listening to this person and look at, and I think it can be really
like the
easy.
abusers are listening to this podcast and being like, see, like, because she literally, there was like quotes of them saying like, what role are you playing? Like, you must be playing one. People treat us how we allow ourselves to be treated. And there is some truth to that when you're safe. When you do have power, there is personal responsibility. Like, I think it's the lack of nuance. Like, that's the issue with this is like the lack of holding both is like, if you are safe and like have like physical, and I'm not even just, I'm as an adult, I'm honestly talking about physically and like financially stable more than emotionally stable, because there's a lot of relationships in your life if you that are probably not emotionally safe, and like you still have a responsibility to figure out like how to navigate them. And like what I'm speaking about is like this notion of like, there's no differentiation of like if you're in an abusive situation where you're disempowered and you like don't have access to things and like you can't leave, like these techniques don't work, and there's no acknowledgement that it doesn't work. In fact, she pushes against that on like all of social media, and that's the part that's hard. Is like, it'd be one thing, it's not great, but it'd be one thing if she just like wasn't thinking about like the outskirts of kind of like the norm. Like if she was just kind of like in this space of like, I'm just thinking about my typical audience or who I'm going towards, like that would be like kind of like a Brene Brown, where it'd be like, oh, you're not as inclusive as you think you are. I think it's a little bit more than that, because she pushes back on the notion that when people challenge her, like she pushes back on that.
Yes. It's that, and it's, if her techniques, if her methods aren't working for people, I think it can be even more damaging, because you just come back with, well, you're not quote unquote trying hard enough, or you're not doing self-reflection enough, or you need to dig deeper. And I think that's really damaging too.
Yeah. So Gabe, if you could pull up some of the Instagrams.
Okay.
The first one about ADHD. So like one thing I also noticed about, her, I had mentioned this earlier, but like there was this progression when I listened to podcasts from like 2019 or 2020 to like 2023. And like earlier in it, she was kind of talking a lot about like, oh, fuck cancel culture. And like, you can have your own take on all of that. But the energy from it was like, people have tried to cancel me before and like, fuck them. And then it's kind of shifted to like, her trying to be more inclusive and talking about like life circumstances, mostly being like financially unstable, being like an impact. Yet I've never seen her mention race. Doesn't mean it hasn't happened, but I've never seen her mention race. I do see her put like kind of like scholarships for her like self-healers like program to like fix yourself or whatever. Like there's scholarships for Black people, like, oh, there'll be 10 this month or whatever. I don't know like what percentage that is, but so like there's been I will say a tiny acknowledgement. Like I don't want to be completely biased in that way.
Sure.
But I was laughing with Rachel earlier because I was like, of course her like acknowledgement is like not for Black people outside of like her group that are questioning it, but to try to bring more Black people in to like drink the Kool-Aid.
Right.
So that part was interesting.
And just a scholarship.
So this is one of the Instagram posts. This is one of her like posts where she's kind of like bringing in this like self-healer framework. I think kind of where it becomes unsafe or like really harmful, not just more of like, ooh, this could be misinformation. I mean, yes, it's misinformation, but I think it could also like create like a false narrative that like somebody who has ADHD can just like change their brain with like joining her self-healer circle.
And tell us why you can't do that.
Because people who are neurodivergent, brain is set up differently. And so like you can't change the way your brain is set up. All you can do is like create an environment / build your own skill set to like make it work to its highest capacity, which might be which could be just as good, if not better, than people who weren't neurodivergent. But like there is no way of like, I'm going to work through all the trauma that happened to me to not have ADHD. That's not possible.
And it's a little bit like that's that pseudoscience kind of weaponizing thing again, because ADHD does have like an emotional component to it. There is like well, you struggle with emotional regulation, but that's because your brain's built differently. That's not because of trauma. Right.
So people with ADHD can be more explosive. It's harder to control big feelings, and that's about the way your brain is wired, not about your childhood. So the post says, for people who aren't watching, is ADHD actually complex trauma in some people? My answer to this question: complex trauma, CPTSD, is not a recognized diagnosis, even though the research is clear on the impact of complex trauma. ADHD is officially recognized. Most people...
This actually isn't true anymore either.
It is true. In the DSM, I don't think it's in the DSM.
It's a qualifier though, isn't it?
Yeah, but it's not a diagnosis.
That's fair.
What is the DSM?
It is the diagnostic manual for like diagnosing diagnoses. So like
the official,
like
whatever,
the official
record on
thing.
that stuff.
It's like the official board and record on
Psychology
it.
Bible.
Yeah, basically.
I don't know that you have to do it now, but you might want to establish what ADHD is supposed to, because I know you're saying some of this is bullshit, but I don't know why.
It's bullshit because PTSD is an event that happens that changes the way your body reacts to certain things. People are born with ADHD.
Okay, that's what I'm wondering. So
Yeah.
ADHD does not come from trauma at all.
It doesn't
No.
develop.
Okay,
No, you're born with it.
you're born with it.
It's
okay.
like autism.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's
It's
like
actually
autism.
it's like under like the ADA, like the American Disabilities
Yeah.
Association or something.
Yeah, you can qualify it as a disability.
Like
Can-
your brain chemistry is different.
Can trauma make your ADHD more pronounced?
Sure, but
Okay.
healing trauma won't remove your ADHD, which is
Exactly.
what you get, I think, from reading this.
You mean I can't will myself to be not mental or something like
Trust
that?
me, because if
Like
I
that's-
if I could, I would.
Right.
Rachel literally has this diagnosis,
Like
and
the
she's been in
worst.
therapy for years. So I
Yeah.
guess she's just doing a bad job.
Right.
Complex trauma
Mhm.
is what. Okay.
No ADHD.
ADHD.
Okay. Yeah. I have
And so
that
I'm
too.
saying she's
Okay.
been in therapy for years.
I'm
so-
actually on the wait list for 3 different places to get adult testing.
Wow.
Yeah.
So even though the research is clear on the impact of complex trauma, ADHD is officially recognized. Most people with symptoms of CPSD will be diagnosed with ADHD. Notice that she doesn't say the symptoms of CPSD.
And doesn't talk about comorbidity and doesn't talk about how also like depression is like it's
And
just so-
comorbidity means that like if you have some diagnoses, you're more likely to have other ones. So like if you have ADHD, you're more likely to have anxiety.
yeah, exactly.
And like
Exactly.
for instance, you're more likely to have anxiety because if you have ADHD, you likely can't meet all the demands in your life, which creates anxiety.
and you're overpromising or you're overstretching,
Yeah.
which like
They go together.
Do you guys feel like there's any like responsibility on a psychologist or even a therapist part to cite their sources when they say stuff like this?
cite your
I mean, she's doing it now. In the 80s and 90s, most research went into ADHD. It was not until 2018 that the complex trauma was recognized by the World Health Organization. It is still not recognized in the DSM, the Diagnostic Manual in the United States.
like this also is like a red herring. Like that says nothing. That whole thing just says nothing.
That's what I was gonna say. I don't feel like that cites it, but because
But
she
she's
says
trying
a
to.
different
She's like name
conclusion.
dropping.
Right. No, it's like attempting. It's like fake.
Yeah.
It's like fake doing it.
Yeah.
Like people.
She's like name
it's
dropping.
something that like people can. It's like a quote. People can come and take that. But there's.
Yeah.
Yeah.
CPSD research shows prolonged exposure to chronically stressful or traumatic events during our developmental stages impacts our brain's executive function, our neural system, and our personality. The research notes personality modification even after the conclusion of major developmental stages. This, when you're quoting people, yes, I need a fucking citation.
Bro, she
Yes, I need a
literally-
fucking citation.
She's
That's
a
how I
PhD.
feel.
Yes,
and she's
100%.
doing this is nuts.
I need a citation.
Are you allowed to do that as a therapist? Like, I mean, because I know you guys have pushed back against certain things I've suggested, and you're like, we can't do that. kind of
Yeah,
stuff.
I mean, you are allowed. There's no rule that says you have to
There's no
cite
rule
your
you can't.
sources.
Like if I'm talking to somebody, I'm not like I learned this and it's this method or
there's no
whatever.
rule.
But if I'm writing, like yeah, I probably might be like.
But
to
this
me, that's
is
publishing. You
but
know?
here's like the community here's like the community space of like everything she said is being taken in by the people who buy into the self-healer circle, right? Like that's the whole thing is like they're bought into her, so it doesn't really they don't give a fuck
What
about her
she's saying.
sources. It's her stamp of approval that makes
Right.
it legitimate.
Exactly.
And that's the part that's like nerve-wracking.
Mm-hmm.
Symptoms include chronic dissociation, anxiety, fight or flight state from dysregulation, inability to emotionally regulate, what's labeled mood swings,
What's labeled mood?
interpersonal relationship issues, attachment wounding, lack of fully developed sense of self, arrested development. Great show. Issues with concentration, procrastination, free state, chronic helplessness / negative worldview. What's less important than a diagnosis or label is the empowerment to know you can heal. You can develop skills and tools to change your behavior, and you practice daily self-acceptance around things you're ashamed or misunderstood around. No diagnosis is a life sentence. There's always hope. There is always healing. Actually, that caption's less bad than I thought it was
Yeah.
going to be because it feels like it's specifying the
Yes.
fact that like you can get skills and tools to change your
Mhm.
behavior, not change your diagnosis.
Mhm.
The part that's confusing is I feel like she kind of tried to say at the front end of this that like you could shift some of this by like you don't like not all of you who have ADHD actually have it. You have CPTSD. So this feels confusing. And that's
it's
how I
like-
felt when I was consuming all of her content, honestly, is I was
It's
like, my head hurts. Like,
And imagine, and I think you said this earlier. We've talked about this multiple times. Like imagine you have a severe and persistent mental disorder, which is like schizophrenia or schizoaffective disorders, bipolar,
MDD.
MDD. Borderline isn't one of those, but it's like that. And people, it also feels dangerous because you think you can self-help your way out of
No, yeah.
one
She's
of those.
like-
I don't think it's
and
not one of those.
literally like I'm not saying she's saying this, but
Yeah.
what's coming across on all of her social media and her website, because I did like a deep dive, is that like no matter what's going on with you, if you buy my book, you'll be okay. So treatment needs to involve emotional regulation, the practice of feeling uncomfortable emotions and consciously respond to those emotions in the ways that don't send us into shame spirals. Not everybody isn't regulating because they feel shame. Some people aren't regulating because they don't have the tools. It's not about shame, but okay. Self-acceptance, the practice of accepting your quirks. So is having bipolar a quirk?
I'm a quirky guy.
Your perceived
I'm
flaws.
DID. I'm quirky. Sorry.
I don't believe in DID, but yeah. And your uniqueness that most people must have misunderstood. Yeah, that's what's wrong. Not that you have mental illness or not that your brain functions differently. I have schizophrenia and I literally hallucinate, but what wasn't fucked up wasn't that I was hallucinating that someone was chasing me. It was that somebody made fun of me.
One of my quirks.
Sorry. I'm sorry.
It's so simplistic, but this is what draws people to it, is because they feel like they're just as smart as this psychologist they look up to. This is part of the allure.
Yep.
People love this shit.
Yep.
So when I used to
it's
sell,
intoxicating.
when I used to sell furniture, this is what this reeks of, by the way. The
When I
best
used to
salespeople
furniture.
just tell every person who comes in, they go, like someone's looking at a sofa and they go, is this a good sofa? And the best salespeople just go, oh, bud, that's one of the best ones we've ever made.
I love this one.
Yeah, like that's what they just validate their experience constantly and they get the most sales. It's so disgusting as like a hack.
Yeah.
And that's what she does directly, right? She just tells everyone what they want to hear.
Yeah. Well, and then the third one is emotional expression. So learning to get in touch with anger, getting out of good girl programming, saying no and setting boundaries.
And it's things that are
This is the kind of shit where like you do her workbook and you read her thing and you have no tools and you're just like screaming like, I'm setting a boundary and it's okay with me to be fucking angry.
Yes.
Like you're just like losing it. Because like this, so then,
But really you need a DBT program.
yeah, you need help. You need concrete ways to do the things she's saying are just the simple ways. Like emotional regulation is like everybody's goal for their whole life. Like it's like a lifelong goal. And I don't feel like she gives things the depth they deserve. They don't have the depth that.
Which feels on purpose.
Oh, it does. Because it builds hope. Oh, it's simple.
It feels hopeful. That's
Oh,
it. Yep.
I can do this. Let me get in the wait list on the self-healer circle. I got it. And then the last slide of this is what we read. Oh, no, that's not it. Okay, so treatment
God,
needs to involve
polyvagal theory is so
more
wild.
somatic experiencing, learning to feel and identify sensations in the body rather than reacting to them. For instance, why that would be damaging, just an example, is like if you have PTSD, so post-traumatic stress disorder, so you have a physical reaction to the trauma you had that's changed your brain chemistry and body, and you are by yourself deciding, all the feelings have shut down, I'm just going to start feeling them now. You're at a really high risk for harming yourself, having like increased depression, like using substances. Like most people who've had significant trauma who get into their body, they need a lot of help and support once they do, because it's actually really painful and horrible. So to tell someone they can do that in a workbook, like I'm just imagining somebody by themselves at like 2 a.m. who couldn't sleep, like opening a page and like reconnecting to a traumatic image and like having nobody. And like
feeling like it's their fault.
The other thing that feels like a cult about this is that like if you try to talk to somebody who didn't do therapy, who wasn't into self-healers circle about this, like you would be able to dismiss everything they said by being like, well, you're just not up on this. You just don't understand this. Like this kind of positions everybody who's against this, like they're against your healing and empowerment. And that's why they don't want you to do it.
Yep.
Like, oh, you're not for my empowerment? Are you serious?
Do they do a lot of live events?
I don't know.
Because if they do, that's terrifying. Like to me, that is a big
I'm sure
step
she
down.
does talk. She does a lot of podcasts, I think.
Yeah. So then polyvagal education, awareness of our nervous system states and how they impact our thoughts and behaviors. That's like a really big theory. That's like a whole book that's about like the way that we're like programmed to function in the world. But sure.
It's huge.
Mitochondria and gut awareness.
This
The
is also
clear
huge.
link between mitochondria dysfunction and addressing mental wellness on a cellular level of the body. I can't tell you shit about this.
I just want to say that when people start saying it's obvious, this is clear, this is a fact, like that's like language that to me makes me feel icky and like there's something going on here because it feels like they're trying to prove something.
Absolutely.
I feel like the thing she's trying to talk about here is like alluding to like how your gut like can impact like your mood and things like that, which I don't really know much about. I buy that like your gut and your brain are connected, but I don't know much about it.
fixing your gut health won't make you not have schizophrenia.
No,
so that's like the part that's hard is like there's just this and I'm sure her response would be, did I say it does? No, but you didn't clarify that it doesn't. And like somebody would have to spend their money to find out that it wasn't going to work. And like that's the part that feels gross.
Right.
You're just eating the wrong cereal.
I guess so.
For your schizophrenia.
Yeah. Gabe, can we get is that the last slide of this?
Yeah, there's the
sales pitch. So then it ends with a sales pitch. And this, I feel like literally everything before it that she said could have been valid and it would have been ruined by this sales pitch. Like,
and it
truly.
was.
And it
did.
She basically just pitches like, we can teach you how to do all of this. We can teach you in exclamation point, you how to heal, AKA without help, without having to, like, she's also kind of saying without saying this is cheaper than therapy. So do this.
Yes.
This is the cheaper option. Like they're scamming you.
Yes.
Like you can do it yourself.
Can therapists advertise?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, like 50% off on therapy this week, or 2 for 1 on child trauma disorder.
Yeah.
Okay. I was just curious.
I mean, I think that's
You can
fucking
do
weird.
any-
But
Super
legally,
right.
legally, I think you can. Yeah.
Okay.
This is
tons
fucking
of
weird.
therapists who do like the whole like snake oil, like shit like that. But to me, like it's just weird. Like that's how I don't know. Maybe
It's
they
like
want
my
them off
massage.
like that.
It's like when I go to a massage therapist and she wants to sell me her candle. I'm
Literally.
like, if a fucking candle would have worked, I wouldn't have paid you $150 for 90 minutes.
Thank you.
Like, I don't know what are we talking about right now?
Talking about.
All right, can we see another Instagram game? Okay, this pissed me off. So it says, I wish more people talked about how the gifted and talented child endlessly trying to please is the adult with an autoimmune disorder. Oh my God. So all my clients with autoimmune disorders are people pleasers, and that's why. And then she goes into this whole description about how 75% of women have are the ones who have the autoimmune disorders, and like women are people pleasers. Oh, thank you. With over 75% of autoimmune diseases presenting in women, we have to look at the roles that a lifetime of suppressing and pleasing does to our bodies.
No citation, just pulling a fucking fact out of whatever.
Well, and I always look at the comments, right? And the comments were like, go Google this, and there will be
I'm sure
research that supports this, and it'll be like I didn't look at it, but like I'm sure it's some loose correlation.
Yeah.
From a young age, many women are taught to be seen and not heard, to keep secrets, to produce and achieve, to carry shame that was never their own, and most of the time they're taught to do it alone, without any adults to help them through the issue, to validate it, or to say that wasn't okay. This is why this is a mindfuck, because that paragraph feels very validating as a woman. Like, oh, it is so hard to be a woman. It is so, and there's a lot of truth to that. And then I feel like specifically, this feels targeted towards white women, because white women like heavily identify with being women, because that like is their minority status. It makes sense. And so like this also feels like, oh, I'm finally being seen. Like you get it. Like you see me. Like this was so hard.
it gives first wave feminism just a tad bit.
And to this cultural push to forgive, which often creates even deeper repression, the good girl has no outlet for her anger. Why does good girl feel sexual every time she says it?
I hate
that's
it.
what
It
she
makes me want to
says.
puke.
Instead, she smiles, says it's okay when it isn't, and stays quiet, going through life in survival mode. Her body remembers, and one day she presents with an autoimmune disease, a functional freeze state, or a mystery illness.
No, she didn't.
After she's told it's just in her head, that her test results came back normal, that she probably just has anxiety or depression, but her body remembers, and it's loudly speaking no and enough. Hashtag self-healers. 6,000 comments. So like this is the piece where like you're not saying this. This is not what's being said. And what I could logically assume from this is like if I healed and stopped being a people pleaser, I could like reverse my autoimmune disease in some way, or like I gave myself an autoimmune disease that's irrecoverable by being a pleaser. Or
There's so much trauma in my body that it made me so toxic that I have this disease or illness. What?
where like my cells are attacking my cells, and like, oh, she did bring up mitochondria and like being unhealthy at a cell level. Like, oh, that makes sense.
Right.
And those are the things where it's like there's nothing clear about that says it's her opinion, but it's very clearly her opinion. And like her like attaching psychologist to her name makes it feel like it's fact. Like that's that creating thing of like the legal liabilities of. So then this one she posted, it says, if basic needs aren't met, mental wellness can't exist. And the reason why I posted this because I was like, I'm going to be gracious. Like I feel like I saw that actually aligned with what like I would feel like a brown or black person who was like in touch would say. I think that there's truth to that. Like, oh, look at her acknowledging circumstance, even if she's not being explicit about it. And then the post was stupid. We can't be well if basic needs aren't met. Of course, people have anxiety, depression, and any other symptom from their body if they can't make ends meet or if they don't feel safe in their home / in relationships. Our bodies are incredibly wise, and anxiety is our internal alarm saying, I am not safe. I need to be on high alert. I cannot relax. And what I would push back on this and say is that actually an anxiety diagnosis would say like you were safe and you were still feeling on alert. Like that is what people are actually saying with anxiety diagnosis is like, if you're unsafe, like any like logical clinician can't diagnose somebody with anxiety who's like responding to a situation that creates anxiety. It's not when you supposedly don't have situations that are anxiety producing and you feel unsafe. So like, that's not even true.
Right.
But the second piece pissed me off because it said, depression is the body shutting down saying, I am not safe. I need to dissociate. If I freeze, I can survive this. And to that, I say, like, I don't think people completing suicide is freezing. And, like, this is literally the work I do. Like, this is, like, there's a lot of different states to be in depression. People can be active about their depression. Like this
people
is
literally say
made
people
up.
who are manic are more likely to commit suicide than people who are in a depressive swing.
It just pissed me off because I just felt like all of this was like alluding to the fact that like your circumstances created what was happening for you. And there's some truth to the fact that like your circumstances probably made what was happening worse or better. But like there's a lot of things people are just born with. It's this notion that like the world stripped away everything and like you could have been self-sufficient and like happy and connected and safe if like the world hadn't done that. And like some people are born with a body or mind that means like they will forever need help and like they aren't gonna be in a space of empowerment where they don't need support and like they're vulnerable or whatever these things are. Like this isn't true.
It's that, and some people have such shitty life experiences or live continually in such shitty life experiences that no, they can't escape. Like you can't escape or outwork your trauma. They're going to live with it forever. It will impact them forever. Some people don't have the resources or whatever it is. And so it's also just very, yeah.
And then she continues, suppressing these symptoms is not the answer. Oh, I should have known. I just wouldn't work. I didn't work through my depression. That's the problem.
Right.
This will always provide temporary solutions because we don't understand symptoms as adaptions. And we don't understand that all humans have core needs for safety, belonging, and overall purpose. Oh, that's it. I'm depressed because I don't have purpose. Cool. Mm-hmm. We also don't talk enough about the reality that many therapists themselves are in survival mode. Many are in massive debt with very little pay. The same goes for others in helping professions. How can people take care of others if they are not while taking care of themselves? Again, a nugget of truth, but not great.
But also it's kind of putting in that thing of don't trust therapists because they're not taking care of themselves.
How can a person show someone the path out survival mode if they're still within it? So you're not. If we want people to be well, we need to fully understand human needs. We need to understand that humans who do not have these needs met will respond and adapt. If our culture has rising mental health problems, and it does, this is for a reason. This is a mirror showing us what we need to heal in ourselves and what we need to bring together as a community, which again, very confusing because a lot of her rhetoric doesn't feel like you should have any community but her community. We need to start looking at people's lives as a whole. And again, like she didn't specifically talk about race. She didn't specifically say like poverty, but like she's talking around it, I guess, which is different than what she was ever doing initially. And like it's sprinkled in like a bunch of gaslighting bullshit. And like I'm sure she's like, well, gaslighting is your perception. And it is. It's allegedly, it's my perception. And like there's a big piece of me that just feels like this is not.
Would it make it better if she was practicing clinically?
No.
I don't think so either. I was just wondering, yeah.
No, not at all. I think, like, then their behavior, we have to start looking at people's lives as a whole. Then their behavior will always make sense. Then we will stop telling people they're sick and we'll start having honest and uncomfortable conversations that we tend to sweep under the rug. Share your thoughts in the comments. #selfhealers. It's just hard because the comments are shitty.
They love her.
No, some of them love her and some of them don't. But the ones who don't, she just doesn't engage in a real and authentic way. And like, again, like having an honest conversation about having schizophrenia won't change you having schizophrenia. And like, I'm bringing that up because like, there's just these obvious gaps in what she's saying, and it feels like the only motive to ignore that would be to make a sale.
Yep.
And on that note, you have anything else you want to say about her?
No, I'm feeling like I want to go like scroll.
Cleanse.
Yeah, cleanse and go through her page a little bit. But someday I'm going to sing it. I say it every time. It's the end of the week. Sorry.
You're sick.
You gonna say goodbye or anything?
Oh yeah, bye. We'll see you guys next week. Cheers.
It's the end of the weekend, but I still wanna turn up. Yeah, I still wanna turn up. All I want is to go again, but you
NBC. No relation to NBC.